Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. In this podcast, we'll be having discussions around the secrets which attract lasting, healthy, fulfilling relationships, creating a healthy mindset, and what women should know and understand about men. Introducing your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts, relationship expert, trainer, speaker, and best-selling author of the Cupid's Bow technique. Lyn's mission is to have a positive impact in reducing divorce, domestic violence, and suicide.
Welcome to the Hearts Entwined podcast. This is your host, Lyn Smith, the Queen of Hearts. And today, listeners, I've got a very unique guest talking about a subject which we've not touched on at all before in previous podcasts. I'm really excited to talk about this. Her name is Nischa Phair. Welcome, Nischa.
Thank you, Lyn. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Now, Nischa is a trauma-informed pleasure educator. That's a bit of a mouthful, Nischa.
It is, but it's important to be specific, right?
So tell the audience a little bit about what that actually means, around what you do.
Sure. Do you mind if I use a little bit of my story to share what that means for folks?
That'd be great. That'd be absolutely perfect if you feel comfortable doing so.
Yeah. So I'm an incest survivor, a survivor of assault as an adult, and abusive relationship. So I've got lots of experience in that range of things. And when I was getting out of my abusive relationship almost 10 years ago, I started to reclaim my sexuality, because after the end of that relationship, what I noticed was that I couldn't even touch myself anymore. I was terrified of sex. And prior to all that time, I really enjoyed pleasure. I really felt really connected to my sexuality. I felt no shame about my body, which was rare, given my history. But so this sort of relationship taught me a lot of things about what happens to our bodies when we become shut down over long periods of time, but also how that affects our relationship to pleasure and sexuality. So as I started to navigate what was available at that time, 10 years ago, I realized that there were no trauma-informed options available. So a lot of the methods and approaches I found very triggering, and I ended up experiencing a lot of dysregulation as a result. So at that time, I was already a trauma-informed embodiment coach. And so I sort of took it upon myself to create a system or a series of approaches that would be supportive for people with more sensitive nervous systems, whether that was because of prior nervous system injuries or because of, people who identify as being highly sensitive or folks on the neurodiversity spectrum. So all of the work that I do is very body-based. I don't do a lot of talk therapy. We really just work on trying to rebuild the connections between, brain, heart, gut, and your genital system to try and find a experience of cohesion and wholeness in who we are, both as, emotional, intellectual, and sexual beings in the world. And the goal with all of that really isn't just so that we can have better orgasms. It's so that, I really believe that, and I think we talked about this briefly before we came on the show, that the health of our relationships is inextricably linked to our ability to be who we came here to be. And to show up as the people that we know ourselves to be. So if I'm in this, abusive relationship, I can't care for myself, let alone my community. I can't go and live my purpose because I'm too busy trying to stay safe in this really unsafe environment. So that's really the overall goal, is to support people to live more purposefully in life by reconnecting to an authentic experience of pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I applaud you for speaking about and being courageous enough to be vulnerable in relating it to your own story. So thank you for that.
Of course.
And you're also the author of the book Fawn, When No Looks Like Yes. And I was particularly keen on, bringing this topic into the podcast today, because I think a lot of my audience won't even have heard of the term fawn or fawning, or be able to relate to what it means when you say when no looks like yes. So I thought it'd be great for you to give us, some either tangible examples that either you've experienced that might relate to the audience listening, or that you've experienced through working with your clients.
Yeah. So most of my clients are folks who've experienced some element of unhealthy dynamics within their relationships, whether it's growing up with their parents or with their, romantic partners. All of my clients have experienced fawning at one point or another within those intimate relationships. So fawning was only discovered about 20 years ago. And the word fawn only came into our lexicon in 2013. So this is a fairly new discovery. And for folks who are looking to do this work, we're really at the frontier of learning about how it affects us in relationships and in our lives. So fawn is a stress response. That's the first thing that I want folks to get, because let me back up. So fawning, the way some people might relate to it in terms of their lived experience, it can look like people pleasing, like going along with something you don't want to do. My sort of go-to description is the get out of my apartment hand job, right? It's the thing you do to get the interaction over with in a way that's going to limit the amount of conflict or harm you might experience with a partner. It might be going along with a partner's fantasies, or just letting their turn-ons be yours because it's easier. So all of these behaviors are evidence of this stress response having taken place. So the stress response itself can feel like not being able to talk. It can feel like not having boundaries, feeling kind of locked in and immobilized in your body, really stuck, kind of that grin and bear it. I have to make the best of this really bad situation and just try to get through to the end of it, right? Which is really common in any kind of unhealthy dynamic, toxic relationships, codependent relationships. We see this a lot. And the issue for, I think, a lot of women especially, is that fawning as a stress response, because again, this is happening on the body level. It's not just some, trait of being bad at relationships. These are behaviors that emerge as a result of what's happening in our physical bodies. The issue with the stress response is that it's also conditioned. So it's part of how we perform femininity. It's the expectations that are placed on women to constantly be nurturing and caring and cleaning up the messes and taking on all the emotional labor within a relationship or in the workplace or, with friendships. So it's complex in that it's not just physical, it's also psycho-emotional, and it's also, again, so socially conditioned. So I feel like I just said a lot there. So I'm going to lean back and see if you have any questions that you want to tease out.
Yeah, I suppose what I'd like to get you to do is initially just give us some practical examples of what fawning looked like, either for you or your what's most common in your clientele experience, so that the audience can get an idea of whether they are somebody that's either previously experienced this or are currently experiencing this.
Okay, so abandoning yourself, self-abandonment, either in the bed, playing nice in bed, going along with something that your partner wants to do to try and save the relationship, or to try and keep the relationship together for the sake of the kids. These are things that happen especially within if we're talking about sex and intimacy, it's really the deprioritizing of our needs, of our pleasure, of our boundaries for the sake of someone else's pleasure. So a great example that I hear a lot is, relationships where, and this it's not always, this organization, but it's often a man who has decided he wants to open up the relationship or become polyamorous. And it's not in integrity for his female partner, but she goes along with it because she wants to keep the relationship together. So it's really what happens is we sacrifice our authenticity, what might be really deeply true for us, in order for that attachment, that connection that we have in the relationship. So another one could be, your partner really likes anal and you don't, but you go along with it because he likes it. So little things like that. And it's really just that sacrificing of what's authentic for us and what we want to experience, so that we can make somebody else happy, so that we can make someone else like us, or so we can avoid harm, especially in the case of, abusive and domestic violence situations.
So what other
Is that clearer?
Yes, definitely. That's some great examples there. So Nischa, what are some of the solutions that you discuss or suggest from a practical point of view, as starting points, little easy, maybe steps or exercises that people can start to do to correct this? Because it doesn't mean that you, obviously need to end the relationship you're in, because if you've been going along with something, you're equally responsible, I suppose, in this behavior continuing, because you're absolutely giving out the message that it's okay for your partner to do it, even though you're not comfortable. Actually,
no, that's not true. And that's what I'm trying to get home to people, is that this is not something that we're doing choicefully. This is our body having an automatic subconscious response to a lack of safety and hierarchical stress. So this happens in relationships where there's an imbalance of power. We don't do this. We don't people please. We don't do these things because we want to. We do them because whatever it is in our circumstances is telling us that we have to, in order to maintain a level of safety that allows us to feel secure in our circumstances. So to kind of answer your question, for people, most of the people who find me are folks who have been living with this for a long period of time and have had to end the relationship because no amount of counseling or exercises or eye gazing or, somatic attempts to, repair the connection has been successful. So I see women after they've ended the relationship. But for people who are in the relationship, it's really important that the partner be part of the process, because invariably, so if we're talking about a heterosexual pair,
yes,
the man has no idea of what he's doing to cause his partner to fawn, to trigger this stress response in her body. So the man has to be equally invested in supporting his female partner to feel safe in her authenticity, to not feel like she needs to sacrifice herself in order for him to feel good. Pleasure isn't pleasure if only one person is feeling good in it, right?
Right.
So that's a really most important part, is that it has to be a team effort. And this involves a lot of dismantling of unhealed masculine conditioning for the male partner, and really supporting his female partner to have an equal say in the way their sex life evolves and the way they each evolve as sexual beings, without feeling a sense of coercion. Like, you have to do this for me because this is what I need to feel good. This happens a lot in relationships where there might be pornography dependencies. Right. Yeah. So that's the most important thing, is for, if you are in a relationship, you have to have a team effort, because both people are involved in supporting the safety of the sexual container that you're in. So if my partner has no idea what he's doing to make me feel unsafe, he has to be aware of the fact that something he's doing is making me feel unsafe, whether I know what it is, whether he knows what it is. So it's this real opportunity for both people to kind of create something new in themselves for their relationship. And sometimes that's just not possible, especially in circumstances where there's a lot of either repeated emotional or physical abuse, or consistent, repeated coercion and manipulation around sex. So I usually tell people to hold it loosely and to really just focus on supporting themselves to reorient to a feeling of somatic comfort whenever and wherever possible.
So does it actually get to the stage then where, if both partners are willing and open and on board with progressing beyond this and healing this, that the female partner, for example, in the scenario that you described, does become comfortable with whatever it was she was comfortable with before and feel safe?
Can you give me a more
well, I mean, for example,
the partner wanting to be polyamorous or something? Is that what you mean?
Well, not necessarily that, but say, for example, say he enjoys anal sex, for example, and she doesn't. Okay. So it's not about involving any third parties. So let's use that as an example. So they're in a monogamous relationship, it's happy. There's no abuse, but she's had a previous experience in her life which makes her feel unsafe, around that sort of sex act, let's say.
The thing about healthy relationships is that your partner shouldn't want you to do something that makes you feel unsafe, that doesn't honor your authenticity, that doesn't support you to live in your truth. So if my partner loves me and says he's like, all about my sexual evolution, but is like, no, I want to do this thing to you that hurts you every single time, that you hate, but that you grin and bear it just to make me happy, that's wiring hypoarousal, so an activated stress response and feelings of unsafety into your sexual relationship and into your relationship to your sexuality as a whole. So it's really dangerous. Now, over time, if the partner decides, hey, like, it's been a few years, I feel really secure in my sexuality and I'm ready to start like exploring new things, maybe I want to try anal again. If it's coming from the woman and it's directed by her authentic desire, have at it. But so long as it's coming from a place of you need to abandon yourself in order to satisfy me, all it's going to be doing is reinforcing those old patterns. So we have to be really careful in this, instance. Basically, the man has to let go of ever having anal ever again. And in that, the invitation for that male partner would be, what is it about anal sex that you just love that's so different for you from vaginal sex? Like, what do you enjoy so much about it that you're willing to hurt your partner for it? And so that's part of where we start to tease out, our patriarchal conditioning, because we're all playing the patriarchy pantomime, doesn't matter what your gender is. Right. So really this work is about pulling back all of the layers, the things, all the negative stories that we were told when we were young, the terrible things that religion instilled us with about how our bodies are bad and evil. And those stories about pleasure not being for us and our bodies not being for us.
And it's a sin to self-pleasure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of negative conditioning that's come along with our evolution as well as past traumatic experiences that have all shaped who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and this is why fawn is so tricky, because it is part of our social conditioning. It's part of how we're taught to perform femininity, to submit. We're taught to submit from the time we're very young girls. And part of this is because, when we are developing as, young kids, first entering puberty, the changes in brain development for young girls set them up to people please, because the increase in estrogen that girls experience increases self-awareness. It increases awareness about the world that they're in. It increases emotional intelligence, but it decreases self-confidence. And at that exact same time that girls are going through that big change in how they relate to themselves, their bodies, and the world, boys, as a result of, the increase in testosterone that they're experiencing, start to exhibit risk-taking behavior and pushing and invading of boundaries. That's part of what testosterone fuels for them. So we kind of have this we're set up biologically for a lot of the problems that we experience, especially when we're young and starting to figure out what our sexuality is. So, the thing that I really try to get home in the book, and just for people generally, is that we can be more than our biology. We have to be more than our biology and work to find this place of really symbiosis that honors who we are authentically as male, female, non-binary, what have you.
Yeah, and I think that comes into a lot of what I teach, that we are humans that all have masculine and feminine energy, but usually especially in opposite sex relationships, the feminine energy is more the dominant energy in the women and the girls, and the masculine energy is the more dominant energy in the men and the boys. It's not always the case, but usually. But within that, there is that healthy feminine energy and healthy masculine energy, as well as the unhealthy masculine energy and the unhealthy feminine energy to throw in the mix as well.
Yeah, big time. And the thing with, I think, the way our society's evolved, especially over the last, say 50 years, things are increasing, everything's faster, technology is everything everywhere, can't escape the screens. The combination of these more submissive traits has caused a lot of women to overcompensate by being in their masculine energy and avoiding, the nourishing, healthy aspects of our femininity. Yeah. And that can create, equally challenging obstacles for folks in relationships.
Absolutely.
And it's not the woman's fault. It's because we're, the world is faster. There are more demands on us. We are needing to, make more money to have less things. And then when we sit down in front of the TV to try and unwind and let it go, it's just like everything in the world is wrong and awful. And, we're surrounded by these things that activate our nervous systems into this sort of driving, urgent, I need to survive kind of energies.
I think women naturally default into masculine energy if they feel threatened in any way. 100%. They just default into it, as a natural default energy to protect themselves, which you can then, and this was what happened to me as well, end up living permanently in that masculine energy and wondering why it's impacting your relationships in a negative way. And it's because we're not even aware that that's what's going on.
Yeah. The other thing that happens as a result that really kind of breaks my heart in a lot of ways is that part of that threat and living in that what's called sympathetic dominance, or that more masculine energy, is that we push down our arousal and our sexual energy and anything that might be in any way, attractive. We don't want to attract attention. We don't want to attract harassment. We, try to make ourselves as unseen as possible because we don't want to be catcalled or what have you. And so that feeling of being connected to our sexual energy, it's not just, for the sake of masturbating and having orgasms. This is a really innately creative part of who we are. It supports us to have really healthy relationships with one another, to have fun, to play, to be creative. And so all of those aspects of who we are naturally automatically get shut down, and the light is dimmed as a result. So that's another piece that I really try to work in through my work, is helping people to reconnect with, their light, their sexual energy is something that's not an invitation for a man to take or, colonize in some way, but that it's, your arousal is for you. It's for no one else.
Yeah.
It's for you, and it feels amazing. And we should all just enjoy it for the fact that it is ours. It doesn't belong to anyone else.
Absolutely. And that's what's really attractive,
Yeah.
and draws people to you. Absolutely.
Totally.
It's all around that sort of light and that energy that you're exuding that makes you attractive to others, isn't it?
And it fuels you too. Like I think, because a lot of my abuse happened when I was so young, my connection to my light and to my spirit was really ruptured really early. And I was afraid of it. I was afraid of connecting to that part of me that was so alive and so, unquenchable, because it reminded me of what happened that made me go dark in the first place.
Yes.
Right. So there can be this fear about, stepping into this place of expansiveness and this place where we feel really limitless and full, both in our energies and our bodies and the world. So I always, suggest to people to take things in bite-sized pieces. Rome wasn't built in a day. And to really titrate how we connect with some of these parts of self and these energies, and just slowly build and embrace ourselves back into wholeness.
Yeah, I resonate completely with you saying about, what was your light that sort of was attractive to others when you was a girl or a teen, when we quite often go through some sort of trauma, is what then switches it off and disconnects us from it, and we have to find that again, don't we? I can remember that happening for me, that obviously I was a girl who was shining my light and attracting probably the wrong sort of darkness towards me, and experienced what I experienced. But that affected me for quite a few decades before I was managing to find the way back to who I naturally am and be able to comfortably shine my light again without it feeling like it's a threat to my safety or security.
Yes. Oh, so much. I mean, it's devastating when it happens, because, I think when you know who you're supposed to be, and you know how you're supposed to be in the world, and you can't because of this horrible thing that happened, there's so much dissonance, and it can just feel, disempowering is really just scratching the surface of it. But finding that way back can sometimes feel insurmountable. And I really want to honor that for people, because I know that I've been on like a 30-year long healing journey at this point. And I mentioned this too in the book, that I know it can sometimes sound really easy for me, and maybe even other people who have come through similar journeys, to be like, hey, you can do it. It's fine. Just put one foot in front of the other, this kind of like toxic positivity coaching rhetoric. And the truth is, it's not easy. And it wasn't, but I stuck with it, because that's really the only other option, is stepping one foot in front of the other and continuing to reorient yourself to yourself, to your own body. For me, that was the really big piece, was just loving and having compassion for my own body every day.
Yeah. And we always have that choice, don't we? We always have that choice to either, like you say, put one foot in front of the other and come through it, survive, thrive, and not be disempowered by whatever experience you went through, or we can choose to be the victim of it, can't we, and wallow in a pity party for decades.
Yeah, which, I mean, sometimes is part of it. I always say, like, sometimes we need to hurt ourselves to learn how to love ourselves.
Yes.
And that's part of the growth, like there's no wrong way of growing. We all have different roads to walk, and there are gems along the way in everyone.
So what would you suggest as a sort of some pearls and words of wisdom for anybody that identifies with, this behavior of fawning, and how to, what first steps do they need to recognize? Obviously is one of those things, but any practical tips that you can give to anybody that recognizes themselves in this conversation?
The first thing is, I said it back there, is just self-compassion. I think not being so hard on ourselves is the first step, and really proceeding in whatever we do with gentleness, like real tender gentleness, and not, forcing ourselves to do something we don't want to do, because that reminds our bodies on a subconscious level of the fact that we had to do something we didn't want to do. Right. So this is this sort of idea of re-traumatization that we can create for ourselves. So with that spirit of self-compassion, the number one most important thing is to continue to reorient to somatic comfort. So whether that means, taking more warm baths, taking more walks in the forest, taking more breaks to cuddle your pet or your loved ones, instituting opportunities in your life from morning to night that support you to feel an experience of body level safety, like just everything's going to be okay and the world is not going to end. So whatever it is that, maybe it's yoga, maybe it's meditation, but just to continue to reorient to that place where my body is safe, I feel safe, and I have my own back.
Wow, thank you. That's great advice, and some really good pearls of wisdom within that. So thank you, Nischa. So what's your best contact information, Nischa, for those members of the audience that would like to reach out to you?
Yeah, so my website, nischaphair.com, is there. There's some resources on there. And if you're interested in talking more, I offer free consults, so you can book through the website. Excellent.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. I'm sure, as I say, that it's going to be a new word, words, fawn and fawning, that is going to be something that a lot of the audience are probably going to be able to resonate with, that they might not have heard of previously. So thank you for that education.
Of course. And the book, you can get the book on the website too, just in case they're interested in picking it up.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Nischa. So it just leaves me to say, true love starts with opening our hearts. And until next time, goodbye for now.
Thanks for listening to the Hearts Entwined podcast. You can follow Lyn via the Facebook group Two Hearts Entwined, or search Lyn Smith, inspirational speaker, at LinkedIn, or email lyn@hearts-entwined.com. That's LYN@hearts-entwined.com. Remember, true love starts with opening our hearts.